I think we've stumbled across a dinosaur footprint. I've seen some in real poor states. Someone looks like they've had a bit of a chisel of it and they've took its middle toe out. I'll sort of trace it out for you when I can get there. Hold on. Yeah, can you spot it? Can you see the dinosaur footprint? Right. Well, there she is. This here is the heel. There's the middle toe where a part of it's been broke off. There's the first toe. The third toe broke off some time ago, but it's starting to get worn by the sea now. Obviously, it's the footprint was made on the other side of this grey rock when it was all sandy and silty in a river delta. And the indentation that was made in the rock was then silted in with a harder material, which, because it's gone harder than the surrounding rock, as it wears away you end up with the imprint like that. As you can see, this area is absolutely littered with fallen bedrock, and there are probably hundreds if not thousands of dinosaur footprints yet to be discovered in amongst all this. Yeah, interesting stuff. As you can see, quite large chunks down here, and we're moving a bit rapid because the tide is a bit slow going out today, but we're sort of having to clamber in between all these really large rocks, and we don't want to be dwelling underneath a cliff like that. So catch you later. I only used a club hammer and a chisel, as you can see here, to reduce this block right down to a manageable size so we could get it off the beach. Bit of a task. Took us over 3 hours to actually reduce this right down using hammer and chisel without damaging the actual foot itself. Tiny taps, big taps. Finally we've done it. Exhausted, got it off the cliff. Took us 45 minutes to do a 5-minute climb. Really exhausted. We slept well that night. Yeah, some of the grey bedrock around it, I actually brought that home because just so I could get a colour match. Weren't quite sure what I was going to do, how I was going to display it, or what. What we did know is that when we did move it, this dinosaur just took its first step in over 180 million years. Hi everyone, Steve here, Romford Fossil Hunter. I'm here just to give you a bit of words behind some of the pictures here. Obviously you're looking now at how we found it. It was falling over a little bit. We sort of saw it on its side, stood it up, and was quite blown away seeing the obvious 3-toed specimen. As the previous text says, we never collected it on the day that we found it. It was quite a big heavy block. Just took some pictures of it, put it on the local Yorkshire fossil Facebook pages, and was quite astounded with the responses. People saying, "Oh, I hope you collected it," and "Oh, I bet it took a long while." Well, we didn't, so we went back to get it, and it took ages because I didn't have any cutting machinery or equipment or anything. So, as I say, that's how we found it, and I needed to get it home. I needed to reduce it, which I managed to do. And when I finally got it home, as you can see here, doesn't look much like a footprint because you're looking at it from the side. The line that you can see that's drawn around it is because I was going to mount it in a piece of thick 1-inch MDF board, and I needed to cut a shape into the board to house it. Everything I did, I wanted to protect the stone, so that line you see is in pencil so it can be removed. Yeah, so never done anything like this before. I'd used obviously skill saws, bits and pieces, you know, in my day job, but yeah, going way back when I'd done car repairs, I used to use the Isopon filler, and I was quite a dab hand at that. You know, you can mix it all up, move it about, sand it, do what you like with it. You know, I sort of got used to using that material, and it's not brittle, it's fairly sort of pliable, good to work with. So I thought, well, that's the material I'm going to be using. Just another shot of it there with the line round it again. Yeah, I thought that's the material I'm going to be using, and what I needed to try and do, I didn't just want to put bands around this foot and just stick it on the wall or whatever for display as it was. Wouldn't have done it justice. So I wanted to try to replicate the green bedrock that the yellow colour footprint, because it was quite contrasty in that the footprint was yellow, the bedrock was grey, and I thought it looked quite nice. So I figured, well, for an end, you know, result, when I wanted to display it, that's what I wanted to try and replicate. So as I say, the lines are drawn around that because that's basically how much of the foot was going to disappear, if you like, into a hole I was going to cut into a piece of board. Not the one it's sitting on, I hasten to add, that's just an old board it's sitting on to protect the table. Another shot of it there, sort of giving you an all sides view of it, where the line was drawn. But obviously once you do drop it through a cut in a piece of board, you need to know that it's going to stay there, and it may not have. It may have gone right through, it may have fell out, and the last thing I want it to do is fall on the floor and get damaged, not to mention breaking any toes in the process. So I had to come up with a way of putting it into the hole and keeping it there without obviously drilling holes into the specimen and things like that. Everything I did, the specimen had to be you know, preserved at all costs. Anything I did to this was in the interests of preservation, but ultimately a nice display as well. So a lot of thought had to go into how to display this. Not only thought on how to display it, but how to protect it. And it seems daft to any onlooker, it's just a lump of rock, which it is, but obviously it's got the imprint and history, and you know, we all know what it is. So yeah, preservation, I looked at all different types of varnishes and stains and all sorts, and I've done a lot of reading to make sure that anything I put on there was reversible, because I don't know, some point in the future some museum may turn around to me and say, oh, we'd love this, you know, put it on our wall, put your name to it. This is the top view of it, which, you know, you can see more of the yellow colour. This is after it had a real good wash, getting rid of all the dust and stuff that it had on it. I mean, it had been wrapped up in so many layers of bubble wrap and put inside a big heavy duty bag. It had been moved about, but mollycoddled really carefully. But yeah, you can see the missing toe there in the centre is quite evident, but we was lucky to be able to find the missing toe. There was some fragmented bits and pieces where the toe joins into it, so there had to be a very slight gap left. So I took the option to deliberately, or the decision rather, to deliberately leave the glue line, if you like, highly visible, so you can clearly see that it's been stuck on. That comes in a later picture. This is a piece of cardboard where I obviously use that to sort of draw around, because it's easier to cut a bit of cardboard to know that you're getting the right size hole before you start drilling and cutting proper thick board with jigsaws and skill saws and everything else. I had a rough sketch, just a bit of paper is there, you know, just showing what I wanted to do, just thinking the idea out before I make any mistakes, starting with a piece of cardboard. And then when I got the size right, this is the workbench in the garden. Obviously you can see I've cut out the shape in a piece of thicker, inch thick, 25mm thick MDF, high density board. You can see the piece of thinner cardboard just at the top of the picture there, just above that, where obviously I used that as a template when I was sure that it was the right size hole, and obviously keep adjusting it with a pair of scissors till you get it right, and then use that as your template, draw around your wood, cut it out, my little yellow jigsaw that was there as well, which allows me to do quite tight corners on it and stuff like that. Yeah, doing it outdoors is a good idea, and if ever you're cutting this MDF, as many of you probably know, you need to wear a mask when you're doing it, because the very, very fine dust and powder and that comes off of this, it can really get into your lungs. Yeah, I mean, it's just a closer view there of it. But what I'm actually making, I mean, the bit you see with the hole cut in it, the thicker piece, that's just the face of it. That's obviously where the foot is going to go and be presented. But I can't just screw that on the wall, because the foot is going to be protruding through the other side. So the other pieces you see leaning against the fence in the middle, sort of right of the picture there. There's two angled pieces and another smaller flat piece. These are all going to be drilled and screwed into position on this big piece with a hole in it. So basically I'm making it so that when it's all screwed together, it will stand up all by itself on the floor, but the angle has been worked out so it's presenting the foot in the best possible angle for you to see it. This is it when it's all screwed together. Obviously it could be floor mounted as a display, but I'm obviously not going to be doing that. I've got a fossil preparation shed and or cabin rather, and I was intending on putting it on the wall, so I put some very heavy duty metal brackets on the back of this so I could put it to the wall. All of the screw holes you can see in this, I mean, this is obviously the raw carcass as it's made, and you know, the foot then would actually be presented to the hole and it would sort of sit there, but as said, it would fall right through, so I had to think of a way of holding it there. The other thing is that which I never took any images of, is that I got hold of a very large piece of A3 plain white card, because I noticed when I looked at the grey bedrock, there's another image of it there showing the foot roughly in place. That's not its final resting place, and the colours ain't quite right on this image neither because it was in the shade, but you get the idea. Yeah, the A3 card, right, the reasoning behind that is when the grey bedrock that surrounded the foot when I saw it on the beach, I brought home a little tiny piece of it so that I could mimic the texture of it and also the colour of it as near as I could when I was making my surround. I also noticed that when I shone a light, like a torch at night, across the small piece of bedrock that I brought home, it had weird sort of shapes on it, like random sort of thumbnail shaped random shapes all over it. So I thought, right, well, that's what I need to mimic. So I got a piece of card, I cut those same shapes quite close to each other in a piece of card and used that for the first part of the template when I was laying up. There's more of a front view of it in the thing. You can see straight away at the bottom there that the hole is a little too large because obviously there's a little nick in the bottom of the hill there. The other thing which isn't evident on any of this, you may see it on the original first image. Again, but it's not, I never took a side view image of the specimen as found, but if I had, you would have seen that the grey bedrock where it comes and meets the actual specimen, the foot indentation itself, the footprint, foot cast, call it what you will, all around the edge of it there was signs that it was all raised up, so it's as if literally a foot had been splodged into mud, and what would happen to that mud if it was semi-firm around the edge of a footprint, it would all splodge out, you know. So I had to replicate that. I mean, it had obviously been eroded in time, so I wanted to build that back up again to the layers I believe they would be. This is a view of the back of the image. It's the idea that I came up with for holding the rock in place. Just 3 long steel bolts. The wing nuts, which would go on the bolts, I drilled very carefully into the wing of each nut. and screwed those wing nuts in position, so they wouldn't move, and then screwed the bolts into it. Obviously the further I screwed the bolt in, it then touched the specimen at a different point, so it was quite adjustable, and obviously now, because they're all steel, there's screws in the back there that's holding all the thing on. They're only just touching it, they're not drilled into it by any means, but it's now, because of the angle of the wood, the centre of gravity, the way it's resting back on 3 steel pins effectively, and it worked quite well. Bit of adjustment here, there and everywhere. Another view from the front, there's the little piece of grey bedrock down the bottom, where you can sort of see some texture going on there. It's the texture I mentioned just now, the reason I had to buy the A3 card and cut pieces out. Again, it's been sort of worn smooth, that small grey piece on the bottom, because obviously it's been prone to the sea and wearing it and everything else, so you had to assume that you was looking at a piece that hadn't been worn by the sea, so it would have been slightly more raised up, the features would have been a bit more exaggerated. So yeah, I had some other pieces other than this. This is just one I put next to it, which really was for colour as well. I wanted to make sure that when I mixed up my car body filler that I was going to use, which I had now purchased as a great big bucket off of a well-known auction site, plenty of a hardener with it as well. It goes off pretty quick, so you can lay up a few layers pretty quickly as well. That's just another view from the top. That just shows the toe in position straight away. It sort of alters the whole profile of it and makes it look again a bit more like a footprint. Yeah, so trying to get as accurate as I could, so allowing for the raised up splodge, for want of a better word, where the footprint went into the soft mud, silt, sand when it actually made this print. I wanted to replicate that all the way round to the same lines as the original specimen when I found it. Again, if I shone a torch along it, I could see how far the splodge mark came out to, and have estimated or guesstimated how high that would be for the weight of the creature that obviously, you know, pushed this far into the silt. Then I assumed that you would have a splodge almost the same sort of depth, you know, so in other words, from the matrix, the grey matrix, up to the top of the foot, how deep it went in. This shows you how fragmented the toe was in pieces. I think the sea must have like really given it a wallop with a rock and smashed it into about 4 or 5 different bits. Really was a challenge. It was. I'm not good at jigsaws at the best of times. This was a challenge, and it did take me a very long time. You can see in the background there I've got my magnifying glass on a umbilical with LED lighting, and I spent, it must have probably took me 2 hours, and that's not exaggerating, trying to make sure that I've got every one of these pieces in the right position. Now bearing in mind that big lump right in the middle you see with a crack going through it, that's where the rest of the toe actually gets fixed into that section. So it's all very, very important it goes bang on. The darker colours you see riddling through it, that's obviously marks from the super glue that's been used. The other thing is on the top right of the picture there, you can just see it. You see how nice and sort of curled round that is? That is actually the Stegosaurus's toe. It must have had a broken toe. That's the foot with the middle toe glued back in with deliberate glue line. The one on the right toe is the one that's been sea worn, and the one on the left looks like it's missing or worn, but it isn't. You can see a slight nurb there, and that's what you was looking at just now when I was showing you the other back section. It's actually a toe. It looks like it was broken. I'm thinking to myself, right, in this image it looks curled under, but you've got to think how this print was made. We're looking at the bottom of a print that was forced through sand or silt, so anything that's down is up and whatever's up is down. So you know, the toe, for instance, the middle toe that I've glued is pointing downwards, but if you turn the whole thing upside down and put it how it was made, you could see the toe would be pointing upwards, which shows the flexibility of a stegosaur's foot when it walked obviously the toes are quite flexible, and the sand never allowed it for its toe to sink right into it. It's another closer image of the toe. You have to look really hard, but on slightly the right part of the toe there is like striations, like lines that run through the bedrock and through the specimen itself. Whether they're marks from the actual animal itself, I'm not sure, but they match up with the rock behind it. Again, difficult to see in this image, but when you look at it closer, you know, you can run through 100 images to try and sort of put your case across, but they can assure me that is in exactly the right position where it's supposed to be. And all of the messy stuff underneath that, that's all the 5 or 6 fragmented pieces of rock I had to put there because they needed to be there for this toe to go back into that position again. Yeah, slightly closer image. Hopefully you can see them striations I'm talking about now. There's one on the left, one on the right, and you can see they run right through the main bulk of the specimen as well as into the toe itself as well. Yeah, so you know, there's a lot of stuff that was done under magnifying glasses as well. This here is just a piece of the bedrock from the site, which is a small piece on the left, and half of it has been treated with a watered down version of a satin artist's non-yellowing varnish. I've always used this on any of the ammonites and other specimens that I've used to help to preserve them if they're a little bit flaky or whatever. Lots of different preparators all use different bits and pieces, you know, to sort of try and preserve their specimens, and this is quite a soft sandstone limestone sort of specimen, and it's quite porous, and I found this to be the best thing that darkened it up, and it looked as if it was wet, which is how it looked when it was found. Yeah, so that's what I opted for. So the whole specimen, after all the toe had been glued back into position and I was happy with it all, was totally treated with 2 coats of this watered down artist varnish to soak in, and there's the small bottle of the varnish at the top for anyone who's interested, and obviously you can see the specimen there, which has now got a more of a uniform colour. You can still see a definition between the grey and the yellow just about in the bottom of the picture on the specimen, but I think you'll agree it sort of gives it an overall tone which makes it more pleasing to the eye, and it's preserving it, it's stopping it from flaking. Bearing in mind when it does go on show in my fossil workshop, because there's shards of stone flying about 100 miles an hour where I'm constantly chiselling away at stuff. When this is on the wall, I've got some very, very heavy duty bubble wrap which has been made like a blind, which rolls down over the whole specimen so that it ain't going to get damaged or chipped or whacked, even keeps the dust off of it. So now all this has been treated anyway with the artist varnish, and it had been dried. I left it overnight just to be sure. It's probably okay within an hour, but I left it overnight, and then I got some cling film wrap and totally covered the whole entire specimen with cling film wrap. The reason for this is because I knew the next part was going to start getting messy. This is when I start mixing up the car body filler paste in large amounts, and you know, some of it is unavoidably going to get pushed against the specimen deliberately because I want it to be a nice tight fit, and I'm trying to replicate that splurge mark as well, and it was going to take a bit of time. Now there's 2 types of body paste you use when you repair vehicles. Well, there is here in the UK anyway. Obviously to my worldwide audience, you know what you use, but over here it's made by Isopon, and the stuff we use is called P38, but there is another stuff which is called a P40, which is actually also known as a bridging filler. Now what this is, it's still a fiberglass based filler, but it's actually got particles of fiberglass matting in it, which enables you to cover holes. This is the first layup. All of what looks wet is actually dry around it. This is the P40. This is the thicker that has shards of fiberglass in it. I use this because it is gloopy, gooey, and it enables you to fill the holes around the edge where there was imperfections, where it didn't fit quite snugly enough in the wood. So it was able to fill all that in, and primarily that's what this was used for. And then obviously if you need to use any thick pieces like my splurge you're going to be seeing very soon, I actually use that to lay up the first images of the splurgy sort of bit. Sorry to use the word splurge, I can't think of a more apt way of describing a splodge or splurge. Call it what you will. But yeah, this stuff dries pretty quick. I mean, if you put the right amount of hardener in it, you've got around about 20 minutes or so before you get ready for the next lot. This was the second layup. Now you can see I've started to create the splurge around the footprint, which is the mark it would make if it trod into the mud. Bearing in mind this is all from the other side, but it's pushed down into the silt. It sounds silly, it's a negative of what would really happen, but it still looks like a positive, if you know what I mean, because you get a splurge that gets forced down both sides of the feet underground, as well as you do splurging up from the top. Anyway, this is still all the bridging filler, which has got the fiberglass parts in it, and again the specimen's being protected because it's covered with the cling film wrap, which is why it's got this shine on it. It's going to be easy to remove as well, you know, afterwards when we're ready to take it off, but that's a long way off yet. Then using my piece of white card that was all cut out with those thumbnail sized random pieces which mimicked exactly the piece of grey bedrock matrix I brought home, I then laid it on using the finer body paste now, which is the grey. Went over the splurge to do some finer detail, and then laid up, imagine the card with all the holes in it. I've laid the card on the board whilst holding the card still, and you get a filler spreader, which is like a little piece of plastic basically, which is bendy, and you use that spreader to literally run your mixture over your card and then just pull the card away straight away, and you end up with spotty wood basically, which is, you know, that's what we've got here. I weren't too fussed about getting the colour bang on at this stage because I did buy some masonry paint. I tried all different ways of dyeing this car body paste, because when it comes out of the tin it's got a beige sort of colour to it, and I didn't want that, so I wanted it to be grey, and it had to be as close as I could get it to the original specimen. A couple of layups later you can see it's starting to take shape. The splurge, I'm happy with that. The shapes in it, there's some that are raising up more than others, because every time I laid up one in the card I moved the card slightly so you didn't get replicated shapes. Didn't want it to look like something come off a production line. Before the filler dries it goes through this weird stage where it's really soft, and I got hold of a bit of old plumber's copper pipe about 6 inches long, and by holding that so it laid down, I rolled it all over to sort of flatten out some edges, and that sort of mimicked a little bit of sea-worn mimic, if you know what I mean, so it didn't look so new. Yeah, and I quite like that. You can see just out of the shot there at the top on the left and right this heavy duty steel brackets that I'd fitted to the back of this as well in anticipation of hanging it on the wall. So the colour I got with black outdoor masonry paint, and I put literally a couple of drips every time onto the paste that I spread it, in order to get these grey tonal sort of colours that I wanted to get. And it started really shaping up, and it was coming together a lot better than I imagined. I did have, I'll be perfectly honest with you, in the back of my mind I thought, you know, this is protected in the middle. If this looks absolute crap as I'm doing this, I'm just going to stop, take it out, and then just rethink the whole thing. But as I was getting there and I was putting the bedrock against it, and I thought, do you know what, this really looks like the bedrock. Again, in the picture you can't see it, but I did do all edges of this case. So I've done the left side, the right side, even the bottom that isn't seen, all the edges. There's no visible bit of sharp edges anywhere. Everything looks all rounded off and sea-worn, and has got the same mimicked shape to it. I finally got a brass plaque made up which gives a date, the species, where it was found. Got a Dremel tool, cut out precisely where the brass plaque goes. There it is in situ, and that pretty much is the finished specimen. There is a footprint, there is the splurge, there is the mimicked same colour bedrock, and also a brass plaque that, you know, tells you where it was found and everything else. So I think with regards to displaying a foot on the wall rather than just screwing a big lump of sandstone on there, I figured it came out quite well, and I was quite happy with that. It's the first time I've ever made one like it. Learnt a few things, was able to mimic that splodgy splurge again. Might have overdone it a little bit perhaps, just on you know, this bottom sort of area. Should have maybe been a little bit thinner, thinking about it in hindsight now looking at it again. But overall I'm very happy with it, and it's had a lot of positive comments. This is all the different shapes that have been traced and mimicked, and not mimicked, they've been drawn out, you know, from tracings from actual finds. Get me words out in a minute. And as you can see, they do vary. Yes, it has got a three toes on it, but depending what it trod in, how good it was preserved, and whether its footprint was a perfect footprint or whether it was running or walking really slow, or just like our footprint. You know, look at your footprint on the sand. If you just walk along at normal speed, you'll get a normal-ish footprint, but usually where your toes dig in, it will sort of make the sand ruffle up a little bit, and so sometimes around the toe area it may look a little messy or scruffy, you know. And exactly the same for these beasts, you know. I mean, the weight of them, walking in soft silt as well, not like pure sand, like, you know, on the beach. And it's a miracle really that we're able to get any foot casts from, you know, animals like this. But this shows you the variation of different shapes that can be found. So again, you know, my three-toed cast, a bit like the second one along there, I suppose, on the top of this illustration. And so that brings us round to, there's the before and after. Left is obviously natural light, the right is artificial light. Just have to take my word for it when you say that my bedrock actually matches the bedrock to the left. When you look closer at the image on the left, as found, the splurge mark, as I keep calling it, and how it raised up, how far it come out, there's a quick sort of zoom in on it. It just shows you there right down the centre of the image. That's it. I'm happy with it. Hope you was too. Like and subscribe. Thanks very much. Keep watching.
So we came back for it and we actually found it, and there he is at the moment, trying to reduce some of the weight of it by knocking the back of it off. Loads of it coming off. Luckily it's coming off quite easily, so we shouldn't be here all day. We'll see. So we've got a big chunk come off the front of it and took the toe with it. We managed to save. We can glue that back on later, hopefully. And you can see we've got some cracks we've got to deal with, and hopefully they don't quite go right through the foot.
See the line that's going through here, look.
Yeah, we've got a line going right through there, and hopefully we're not going to lose.
May not come out in one bit.
Yeah. Maybe not come out in one bit, but we'll see what we can do. Well, we've got the toes off, so now we need to get the bulk of the back of it off. A few cracks appearing. Just give it a bit of support with me welly. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Get in there. Whoa, I can see a crack.
Up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a cleave going through there. But hopefully
yeah. Well, hopefully we get the back off first.
No, I've got, oh look, it's here, it's cracked here, look. It should come away now.
Can I move my foot first then?
Yeah. Well, you've never been trod on by a dinosaur before.
And there we go, it's the bulk of the stuff off of it. Now we ain't got so much to carry back up that hill. wow, look at that. A stub-toed dinosaur foot at
We've
the
got his
moment.
toes. Toe there, toe there, toe there, heel there. And there's my hand on it. There you go.
Excellent. Brilliant. Good find. And he's still looking for the other foot. I don't think he's going to find it somewhere. No, we think it may have come from that layer up there somewhere. Knackered. There we go. Was it worth it? I'll let you know once it's prepped.